Hello and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocates, where we help dads create a healthier and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval. I am your host today, and we're going to be talking about a somewhat sensitive topic, and that is anger. There seems to be a lot of misunderstanding and misconception around anger. And we're going to talk about that, but also talk about how anger can actually be something that is beneficial to you if utilized in the right way and in the right manner. But before that, I wanted to share a new feature I have up on the website at thedivorcedadvocate.com. And that is a divorce quiz. This quiz is really fantastic. It's a quiz that I use in the Dad's Divorce Blueprint. And it's called the Fisher Divorce Adjustment Scale. And what it does is it helps you to kind of sense where you are at in adjusting to going through your divorce or post-divorce compared to others who have gone through it. And they use this. It's been used for decades and decades, and millions of people have taken it. So it's really, really fantastic. It breaks it down in 6 different categories and can definitely help you kind of see where you're at and potentially be a tool for you to help learn and sense where it is that you might need to do a little bit of work. So go to the divorcedadvocate.com and click on divorce quiz. It'll take about maybe 10 or 15 minutes to go through. And then if you'd like, we can also schedule a time to talk about your results and see where we might help you in making the adjustment to your divorce. So check that out. Now, on to anger. We hear a lot about anger these days with particularly around men and quote unquote toxic masculinity, or he's got an anger problem. We hear that a lot of the time too. And the challenge being is that anger is simply an emotion. And what I think we don't get, and maybe society in a general or on a whole doesn't get, is that it's not a behavior. Anger is an emotion. Now, what you do with that anger then becomes the behavior. But the anger in and of itself as an emotion is not any better or any worse than any other emotion that we go through. And we've talked about it before, particularly when we're talking about sadness and having sadness, that it's okay to have these emotions. It's how you process the emotions and then what you do with the emotions that makes or breaks, if you will, the opportunity that you have to utilize these emotions, because these are coming up in us for a particular reason. And we're going to talk about triggers a little bit later, but something triggers this. It could be something from a childhood experience or another experience that we had or a relationship or whatever it may be. But these are automatic responses that just happen in us. So that's the same with anger. It's just an emotion. Now, it's a strong emotion, right? It seems to be very extreme, but it's not bad. Anger can actually be utilized if it's done in the right and proper manner to identify things in a relationship or be able to communicate feelings that you have in a relationship. And it could build a deeper and stronger foundation for that relationship, whatever that relationship might be. It could be a parent-child relationship, it could be a love relationship, it could be a work relationship. But if you're feeling these emotions come up, that's a good thing. Just be cognizant of it. And we're going to talk about the 3 phases of going through anger and the best way in which to do that. But before we do talk about that, let's talk about anger in the context of grief also, because grief and anger are very closely related. And we talked about this, I think, a little bit in the grief episode we had months ago, that these are highly correlated. Sometimes you're going to go through grief and experience anger because anger is one of the 5 steps of grief. It's the second step after denial. But sometimes you're not going to go through that denial stage. You're going to go right to anger. And you'll feel that anger before you even realize that you're going through grief. And so if you are angry, you find a lot of angry feelings, emotions coming up on often. Recognize that it might be that you are going through a grieving process, and that is part of the grieving process, because you can go through that grief process, you can go through the denial, you can go through the anger, you can go through the other three steps and have worked through it, and the anger subsides because you've done the grief work on one particular part. For instance, the ending of your relationship, maybe the grief work around that, had the anger come up, dealt with it, and then that subsided, except that you had another angry emotion come up, which is okay, because maybe you haven't grieved another part of whatever it is. It could be another part of the relationship, even. It could be the part that you were a father all of the time. This was a big one for me, that I needed to grieve, that I was a father 100% of the time, and then I was a father. I'm still a father 100% of the time, but I didn't have parenting time with them 100% of the time. It was in 50% of the time. So I had to go through the grieving process around that. And part of that grieving process, the second step after denial, was being angry about that. And so just know that if you work through one angry emotion that comes up, and you do it in a healthy manner, doesn't mean that all of your anger is going to go away and that you're not going to have another angry emotion ever again. That these triggers come up to make you pay attention and to understand and look below the surface and behind behind what it is behind that emotion, so that you can process it in a healthy manner. So let's talk about the couple of types of anger. One of those is going to be a divorce anger, which is going to be really extreme. There's very strong emotions that we're going through during this time. So the divorce anger might be very, very extreme. You might be just very upset and very angry, and that is okay. And then there's just everyday anger and annoyances that we have throughout the day. Irritation, somebody irritates us, somebody says something, makes a comment, whatever. Those are just two different ones, and we can handle those probably different ways. And so that first step to processing that is to accept that it is an emotion, identify that it's an emotion or that is coming up. And just like when you're happy, it's okay that this emotion comes up and that you identify that you are angry. Now, when you're happy, you never have to go, why am I so happy? This is just terrible. It's really, interrupting my day or my life. Anger is different one, obviously, because it's maybe a little bit stronger, and it's going to throw you off kilter a little bit. So just identify it. And after you identify, just accept the fact that an angry emotion came up. Now, that's the key, is identifying and not just having an automatic behavior response to that angry emotion. So that's where this becomes angry behavior, right? Or violent behavior, or irrational behavior, or whatever the behavior is behind that angry emotion. Identifying it and stopping is a good thing. And similar to what we talked about with sadness, is if it's an appropriate time, then take that time in that moment to try to feel what that emotion is and let that anger come up. And so you can let that come up if you've got the time, and that's an appropriate venue to do that. But if it's not, do something along the same lines as we talked about with sadness, which is maybe you just need to take a minute and count to 10. Maybe do some deep breathing, maybe go for a walk, something that's going to just bring that emotion level down. And I think they said that the emotions last for something like 19 seconds or 20 seconds, strong emotions, when you get that initial trigger, right? That they only last for something like 19 or 20 seconds. So if you get through that, you take the time to go for a walk or breathe or take a bathroom break or whatever, if you're in a position or a place where it's not a good time for you to process this angry emotion, do that, and then come back and put it on a shelf, put it in a box, put it on a shelf, whatever you might need to do, bury it in the sand, but just make sure that you're going to come back to it to work through the next steps of it. Because if you just bury it and you don't do anything about it, or you just suck it up, or you just try to plow through it and grit your teeth, it's going to come up again for sure. And what happens is if it keeps coming up, at some point it's going to catch you off guard. And that's where that angry emotional behavior, which is an outburst, just, an automatic outburst from that emotion, is then where things are bad, where it's not a positive experience. It's not doing something positively with that emotion. So just try to recognize it. When you recognize it, accept it, that it's okay. Don't judge yourself. We all have it, right? It might be more extreme right now because it's a divorce anger, and there's a lot of stuff coming up that makes you angry, but we all do it every day. We've got that everyday anger, the irritations, the annoyances, all this stuff. So that's still a form of anger. So just know that you're not alone. We're all going through it. Everybody, men, women, old, young, we're all going through it. Now, the important part then is that second step, which is how do you process that and learn a positive way of expressing that anger. Now, this can vary many different ways, and you can do things if you just need to vent and get something out physically, like just punch a pillow. One could be to just go to a remote area and scream your head off. You need something to just vent some of that anger out and just do something. Some people use exercise for venting through anger and let that emotion come up. They recognize it, they accept it, and then they'll go do some physical exercise that just, they pour all of that emotional angry energy into to be able to get it out. Some people like to listen to music real loud and just dance, right? You could just dance, or whatever it might be for you to get that like physical trigger relieved, like a pressure valve, release of that pressure valve, so that you just feel more comfortable about it. And then if this is an emotion that you've identified that is something that would be beneficial to then talk about with somebody. So maybe somebody said something to you that that triggered something, and these triggers can be unrealistic expectations. They could be frustrations. They could be interference, disrespect, abandonment, whatever. We talked about some of these adaptive behaviors in previous episodes, just ways that we respond to stuff that we just learned when we were children that helped us to get through our childhood. So something might trigger something that is an automatic behavior, but what you want to do is you want to cut that off. So maybe you learned from your one of your parents or a family member how to respond to that angry emotion in an inappropriate way. Maybe it was yelling. Some people yell, right? They just have that emotion come up and then they're immediately screaming and yelling and flying off the handle. Unfortunately, some people just become violent and they just do violent actions, whatever that may be, as a response to that angry emotion. Stopping and understanding that you're being triggered is incredibly important, and then just being okay and recognizing that that's what's happening. So you want to figure out how to release that anger in appropriate manner. Screaming, yelling at your kids, probably not. Going and screaming, yelling into a pillow would be awesome, because it's getting that physical. You're expressing that anger out if you still have that inside of you. So then the next part is expressing that anger, right? So you want to express that anger in a healthy way. And these can be, if you want to just express that, if you don't want to express it to somebody, you can express it yourself. We talk journaling all of the time, right? It could be, I am feeling messages, or I get so mad when messages. You can write those out to help you process, because what we want to do is we want to get to what's the underlying issue. We want to understand what it is that brought that emotion up, so that we can go forward and then create a feeling about that, and do the work that we need to, in order for this to be a positive. So this part is, expressing this is helping you to then identify, oh, okay, maybe it was how somebody said something to me or in a disrespectful way, and that triggered me to be angry because that's how somebody else had talked to me in the past, and this is an emotion that comes up, and this made me angry because I am fearful that I'm recreating this relationship, for instance. And so that's a positive then, because you're identifying and expressing yourself what it was or what it is. Now, it's important, if you can, and if it's appropriate in a relationship, to be able to be assertive and express what these are. You can do this through the nonviolent communication manner, right? You can express what it was, the action that came up that then made you angry, that you then felt angry, and then talk about what you want to do going forward, and why that's important to you. And this is where it can be an incredibly powerful tool, particularly in the context of relationship, because relationship's always going to test us, right? So somebody's going to do something or say something, or something's going to happen that is going to potentially bring up these triggers, one of these triggers, whatever it might be. And we're going to have these emotions. They could be sadness, they could be fear, they could be happiness, or they could be anger. And that's okay. And then if you can utilize that and then express that to the other person about what you want to change and how that would help benefit both you and the relationship, then that is a positive to build that foundation. But this is where you need to be assertive, right? You need to take ownership over the emotion. You need to understand and look in the mirror and say, okay, this is me having the emotion. It's not somebody else. Now their action will trigger this emotion, but you own the emotion. It's incumbent upon you to be able to figure out how to handle it, identify it, accept it, go forward and handle what you're going to do with that. So it takes immense ownership around that, then to be able to utilize this in a healthy manner and not bury it. So then it can lead to increased intimacy in whatever relationship that you have through this ability to communicate and talk about that. And then the goal ultimately at the end is to be able to learn ways to minimize that anger and let it all go, because we don't want to have this all the time. And like I said in the beginning, is there may be things, if you've never ever learned or were utilizing inappropriate ways in which to deal with it, and you've probably never had the opportunity to utilize it in a positive, beneficial manner. And now it's going to take baby steps, right? Because we're reprogramming, reparenting ourselves, which takes an immense amount of self-understanding and self-reflection, and making sure that we're paying attention to how we're feeling and the emotions that are coming up. But then once we do this several times and we see that it comes up, it's an emotion, and now I know how to do anger, right? I know how to do anger now because it's just another emotion. So how do I get through processing that and utilizing it positively going forward? And forgive yourself and forgive the other person around what may happen, because then that's going to ultimately let go any of that anger and help us to move through and into the end parts of grieving, because this again is going to probably, most likely, again, in the context of divorce, probably be a component of grieving your divorce. Now, if it's not in the context of divorce and it's just those everyday annoyances, inconveniences, et cetera, then maybe it's just something, right? but still, you're able to utilize this skill now that you have of identifying your emotions and feel what's coming up, not just having a knee-jerk reaction and a behavior that is not a positive. And then you can assess it. Is it the right time or not? Yes, it is. I go through the process of relieving that, of getting that out, releasing it, whatever it is, screaming your pillow, beating a pillow with your bat, going for a run, lifting weights, dancing, listening to music loud, getting whatever it is. You've got that process now. You release that, and then you utilize the ability to express that, forgive yourself, forgive the other, and let it all go. And then once you're done this, it just becomes automatic. This anger then becomes another emotion like happiness and sadness or whatever that you've utilized, that you've recognized, that you know that you can use as a positive going forward. So that's anger, my friends. This was it sounds very easy, right? That was so smooth and easy. Just go through it, 3 steps, no problem. It takes effort and a challenge. So be gentle with yourself. Understand this is part of the bigger process of what you're going through all these emotions and feelings that are coming up in your divorce. It's okay. It's okay if you don't hit all these steps. Just try step 1. Just identify it, okay? And then put it aside. And when it comes up again, but just know it's not going to go away. you're gonna have to deal with it. So the sooner you learn to work through the steps to make it a positive experience and a transformative experience, the better you're going to get through, and then the healthier you're going to be going forward in working through all the rest of the things that you need to work through in order to move forward from here. So, but I know you can do it. If you're listening, you're committed to figuring out and learning better ways, and I'm proud of you for doing that. So that is it for today. I appreciate you listening. Again, if you found some value, please go and subscribe to the YouTube channel or leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. We've got all the free resources, the workshops, the group meetings that are in the show notes below. Tune on in. We get more and more people every day. The show's now over 7,000 some downloads. We're getting thousands per month. So I appreciate everybody that's listening, and let's keep moving it forward and sharing it with all of the other divorced dads out there. Thanks. Have a good week.